What am I working with? Dan, you have to take a finger.
I feel for you all.
If you can do that, you'll only lose by 20.
It's incredibly boring.
How is that boring?
Carry on.
Shut up, you. If anybody mentions Taylor Swift, it's a straight red card and a 2-pod ban.
We got everything right last week. Yeah, cruised it last week.
Pretty sure I only got one wrong.
Professional, one wrong.
Unbelievable.
I tell you what, it's Harry. Press the button.
Hello and welcome to Punts after game week 3 of the NFL. I'm joined today by James, Aloysius, Vernon, McLean. How are you today, sir?
Why are you using my government name?
Because, well, the Browns have been so bad.
We're not getting into that. I don't want to talk about football today. We're going to talk about dogs.
Okay, we'll come back to that in a minute. And I'm also joined by Oliver Keane, young up-and-coming something or other who is currently schmoozing in Blues hospitality with I don't know, what, Tommy Brady, people who've been on Peaky Blinders. Stop bragging about it, you idiot. How are you all?
I'm good, yeah. It's the back-to-back weekends of all three of my teams winning, which has never happened in my life, so I'm on a positive.
I don't understand it either. I find myself in a constant state of perpetual bemusement and having nothing to blame my depression upon.
It won't last, don't worry.
Good. I need some normality back in my life. So some sports teams losing is going to be good. Right, so, I mean, unfortunately we haven't got Liam today. He is not available. I believe it's due to the fact that he swore off ever supporting the Giants. So didn't get the rub of that particular victory this weekend. And then, of course, in his day job, Manchester United failed to defeat Crystal Palace, despite dominating the first half. We feel for you, brother. Be strong. Come back soon.
We miss you, Liam. Honest.
He will take that as us actually saying we don't miss him. You do realise that, right? We miss you, brother. We really do. It took us 15 minutes to get this going. Right, okay, cool. Let's crack on with things here. Still miss Dan as well. And I thought he might turn up after the Ravens finally held on to a lead in the fourth quarter, but unfortunately, no, he's still busy doing more important adult things, I believe.
Dan's on IR at the moment. So.
Dan is on IR, but it's a not
Not expected back till week 5 at a minimum, right?
If he doesn't make it back by week 5, he might have to spend another 4 weeks on IR. Oh, God. Can't have that happening. Missing too much. Right, okay. Let's get into a little bit of chat about the weekend then, lads. What caught your eye? Who wants to go first?
So as I mentioned, no football speak today. We're just going to talk about dogs.
What dogs do you want to talk about, mate?
I don't know. We can talk about my dogs. We can talk about the dog you're getting. We can talk about a number of things. I mean, I assume you've got a way of bringing this back to football at some point, but but dogs.
Well, if you're not 100% sure which dog you'd like to talk about, I'd like to talk about all the dogs in the dog pound at the Brown Stadium, if that's all right with you, Jim. So over to you, Ollie. How do you think all of those people who were watching the Browns felt as the Giants put on what can only be described as a defensive masterclass?
I think the Browns started with, let me restart. The Giants started awfully. I believe on the first play they fumbled the ball and the Browns recovered it, and then Deshaun Watson passed it to Amari Cooper for a touchdown in the end zone. And I thought, you know what? It's the Giants. It's probably going to be a win in the column for the Browns. And then obviously I was mainly focused on the Vikings, texting Dad and watching Red Zone and trying to keep updated with that. But then as Red Zone progressed, the Browns stopped scoring points. The Giants got a couple of touchdowns, and I can only imagine as a Browns fan that was extremely painful. In terms of being a Giants fan, I believe Malik Neighbours did get 2 touchdowns in the game yesterday.
Yeah,
so
2 touchdowns. I think it was 9 receptions or something, and that was all in the first half. I think he did absolutely nothing in the second half. I can go to town on this, but as mentioned, I'm only talking about dogs today. So yeah, Baxter has been on top form as usual. No, but seriously, as a Browns fan, it was painful to watch. It uh, the defensive performance was so. You can't blame the defense for yesterday's loss. Although what I will say is Daniel Jones in the first half was 17 of 19 for 180 odd yards or something. He took one sack. And we made him look like Aaron Rodgers at points. Having said that, he only played it very, very safe. It was all horizontal and screens and short slants over the middle. So they weren't doing anything fantastic. There was a few out to neighbours who absolutely ate Martin Emerson at corner for the Browns for breakfast, and that's no mean feat. Emerson is no slouch at corner. But it took a full half of Malik Neighbours dominating the Browns defence for us to realise that we should probably put our number one cornerback on their number one receiver, as he was the only person getting the ball. So in general, very, very frustrating day. 8 sacks under Deshaun Watson. Not pretty at all, and that most of those came in the first half when the Browns actually had the majority of the offensive line actually on the field. As the second half progressed, we lost 3 parts to that, and interestingly enough, the sacks slowed down significantly. But when you look at it, the offensive play calling, horrible. Offensive line performance, horrible. Deshaun Watson, horrible. All in all, just abysmal. And you tack on the Myles Garrett re-aggravating his foot injury. All in all, it couldn't have gone much worse for the Browns after the first 11 seconds of that game yesterday.
Here's where we'll let Liam let us know how he felt. I hope you put something in there, dude, when you're editing this. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, like it was. I mean, to me, it's one of those. I always find it fun to see Deshaun Watson struggling, but I do have a soft spot for the Browns, and like Kevin Stefanski's head coach, I've always had a lot of time and respect for. But the game that you won this year, you ran the ball, you committed to the run. The 2 games that you've lost, you don't seem to have committed to the run. Is that a fair statement, or is it just the way the game's gone? You've had to abandon the run.
I think we haven't. We're passing too much. Full stop. I mean, Jerome Ford put in some hard yards yesterday, but the vision's not there for Jerome Ford as a running back. He doesn't offer you anywhere near what Nick Chubb offers. But ultimately, when Deshaun Watson's 1 in 3, 4, 5 seconds to throw the ball, and he's completely averse to throwing it away when he's under significant pressure, then it's a recipe for disaster. To be honest with you, the overall offensive performance was just poor. He obviously hasn't got David Njoku as his tight end for safety blanket. But having said that, we're paying this guy $46 million a year, and he had the ball in his hands 3 times in the last 4 minutes to get a win, and we came up short on all 3 of those. There was one series where we had 3rd and 1. We tried a QB sneak and that failed. And then I think it was a Ken Dorsey special, which was throw the ball 15 yards down the field when it's 4th and 1, which is absolutely insane to me. So watching that, actually trying not to swear at the TV while my wife's sitting there trying to work was a unique challenge. But ultimately, just a very disappointing performance. The second really disappointing performance for the Browns at home this season. The Jaguars beat themselves. Otherwise, we would be looking at 0-3, to be perfectly honest with you. And halfway through the 3rd quarter yesterday, there were loud chants from most of the Browns stadium of "We want Jameis." So the Browns fans are well and truly off the Deshaun Watson, off him in general. No one wants to see him anymore because Do you know what epitomised it for me yesterday? There was a situation where we had the ball I think we started at the 40, and we went for a little 5-yard gain on first down, and that was a simple, like, snap the ball, quick throw into the slot, 5-yard gain, problem solved. And he airballed that over the receiver by about a metre, and he was 5 yards away. And that really epitomises what we've seen from Deshaun Watson pretty much from day one on the Browns. There's been moments, there's been a half here, a quarter there, where he's actually looked like a competent quarterback, but he's so out of his depth and so bereft of confidence. It's absolutely unbelievable.
It must be hard. Ollie, last week we were discussing another quarterback who was struggling, Bryce Young, and as we believed would happen, he got replaced by the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton, coming through. Would you recommend that Jim's Browns give it a go with Jameis Winston, attempting to, rotate in a guy who's had a lot of years in the league, a lot of experience, and has a certain level, and see whether or not they can get the same turnaround as maybe the Panthers did? And also,
I would.
Panthers, man.
I would. I don't think it can, for starters, get any worse with Jameis Winston. I know he can be a bit erratic in the way he plays. He'll just, throw piss missiles down the field and see what happens. I saw it when he came on against the Vikings, I think, last season, and it was really fun to watch. But
I'd give anything for a piss missile, mate, watching this, because watching Deshaun overthrow receivers 5 yards deep it's just got old really quick.
What I would say is, Jameis, one thing everyone knows about him is he's a character. And I think he's a leader as well, and it's something the Browns definitely need at the moment. Like you said, you probably should be 0-3. You're lucky you've got one in the win column. Get Watson out now while it's still early in the season. Stefanski's a really good head coach. We've seen him do it with quarterbacks arguably worse than Jameis Winston last year coming in, and you finished in the playoffs and you had a good season overall, and he was coach of the year. Now, I know you were saying there's elements of it was bad offensive play calling as well, but I think sometimes a coach is maybe more scared to do, tougher passes and different scheming when they know their quarterback can't do it. And that may be the case with Deshaun Watson. I think you should try Jameis Winston, because it can't get any worse. If that fails, well, you put Watson back in. But at the same time, it may cost Stefanski's job anyway if he sticks with Deshaun Watson.
That's what I was going to say. If you drop Deshaun Watson with the money that's associated with that, you could well be talking that Andrew Berry and or Kevin Stefanski is on the hot seat at the end of the season, which, to be honest, I think it'd be a huge overreach from ownership. Being so desperate to get Deshaun Watson to work out. What I would say is I watched Deshaun Watson when he played for the Texans, and there's this myth that he was great at the Texans. He's never been an elite quarterback for me in the league. Yes, he's put up a lot of passing yards. He put up 4,700 or something in a season. But when you look at that Texans team, they were playing 20 points down most of the time. So basically, from the second quarter, everything was garbage time to them. So, they're playing soft defenses. It's pitch and catch. And that's what we see a lot of teams in the fourth quarter doing. The Texans were in the situation by the middle of the second quarter where they were out of games when Deshaun Watson was there. It wasn't his doing. They had a very poor defense. But at the same time, the only time Deshaun Watson's put up numbers in Houston was when they were bad. They were a bad team. I remember JJ Watt apologising to him while he was there, saying, sorry, we've wasted a year of your career being bad. And that apology should probably be revoked and encouraged to say, I'm glad we wasted a year of your career to get you out the door quicker, to be perfectly honest, because the situation that we're in, Deshaun Watson, for clarity, is pretty much undroppable because of that contract. And unless something happens on the legal side of things, And if it does happen on the legal side of things, I think the Browns could well move immediately following a ruling coming down from the league if that voids guarantees and saves the cap space. But you can't cut him because you can't eat a $75 million cap hit when you're hoping to be competitive, which is the expectation from the Haslams with the Browns now. So all in all, it's a really bad situation. The only way the Browns can probably get round this would be to take a flyer on a Bryce Young or something along those lines, because he's under a cheap rookie quarterback deal, and you could afford to run both concurrently, and you'd basically have Deshaun Watson as a $64 million quarterback on the bench. And that's the only way that you could really salvage that situation from a cap perspective. But being 100% frank, until Deshaun Watson gets injured, which based off the fact he took 8 sacks and was rotating his throwing shoulder in the second quarter yesterday, doesn't look too far away as it stands. So we can only cross our fingers, touch wood, and all of the other lucky charms that we've got, and hope that he gets maimed in the next game.
Oh my, okay. So, all of this Deshaun Watson, hey? Let me pile on it. Just going to throw a little nugget out there. So, I saw an article last week which said that Bill O'Brien, when he was the head coach of the Houston Texans, ran his offense using the Alabama system. That was a college team that Deshaun was at, right?
Clemson.
Was it Alabama? Clemson. He used the Clemson defense because that was the Clemson offense, because he could run it. He couldn't teach him anything NFL related. Now, I don't know how true that is with an article that I saw, but I did think, wow, if you're not even going to make sure that the quarterback you're signing to $250 million guaranteed can run an NFL offense, I think you kind of get what you deserve. And much as I do respect Kevin Stefanski, and I've been amused by Andrew Berry a lot around the whole Deshaun Watson thing, and I could have been maybe blaming him for something that your owners have done. I hope that's the case. If they strong-armed him into going and getting Deshaun Watson, then I think that makes an awful lot more sense than two people whose football brains I do fully respect making that mistake. So, I'm not, not entirely sure.
We're on 2 offensive coordinators now. We're on a 2-time head coach of the year in Stefanski. We're on a very competent general manager in Berry. None of them can make this work so far. I would say one minor contributing factor to that this season has been the loss of Bill Callahan, the offensive line coach to the Titans, and replacing it with Andy Dickerson, who can only be described as completely inept. If you look at the amount of pressures and you look at the amount of sacks that the Browns have given up with, when you start looking at that Browns offensive line, it's about a quarter of the salary cap. It's about $60 million is spent on the Browns offensive line. You add that to the $50 million that's Deshaun Watson stood behind it, and those numbers don't compute for. When I was watching yesterday, there were 14 passing downs for the Browns in the first half, and Deshaun Watson was under pressure on 11 of them, or sacked. That adds to the 17 pressures that we gave up against the Cowboys. You can't, take Deshaun Watson out of the equation.
Is there an argument, Jim? Genuinely, is there an argument that you're calling him the least effective O-line coach in the league, but if the plan is to get Watson injured, is he not doing his job perfectly?
Well, and that's why I said he's only a minor contributing factor. Technically, he's a major contributing factor, but when you're giving up the amount of pressures with a Pro Bowl left guard, Pro Bowl right guard, Pro Bowl centre, Pro Bowl right tackle, our left tackle, he's a bit shaky, he's coming off an injury, but you shouldn't be giving up 6 sacks to the New York Giants in the first half of the game. We were completely surprised, completely bamboozled by the blitz consistently, and they got home all the time. So Deshaun Watson wanting years to throw, offensive line not actually being able to block anybody. Why we don't feel the need to chip a pass rusher like Brian Burns coming off the edge and going around a 360-pound right tackle is absolutely beyond me. So, yeah, the offensive play calling, the offensive line work, the quarterback, The receivers are dropping passes. The running back fumbled yesterday. All in all, it's a disaster. You flip that over onto the defensive side of the ball. Jim Schwartz made some alterations at halftime, and the defense looked a lot better. But in that first half, like I said, the Browns, there was a 13-play, 95-yard drive by Daniel Jones and a 15-play, 91-yard drive by Daniel Jones yesterday in the first half. That takes some doing against him, who we've seen. He threw, when they played the Vikings, he threw an interception to a guy 2 meters away from him. So
yeah, we've got the best defence in the league, though, mate. You can't look at that game and pass judgment on it. I don't think. I do feel.
If you're anything like us at Utter Punts, we love the fantasy games surrounding the NFL, but sometimes they're a bit too focused on their American audiences. That's why we were blown away when the Fantasy Game Day app rolled into town, a weekly fantasy game with player values in pounds totally dedicated to the NFL's UK audience. There's insights and analysis and plenty of opportunity to compete with your friends, but the best bit, weekly cash prizes. Use code PUNTS when you sign up for a free entry after you play your first week.
I do feel that we should probably move on, because I can feel you're kind of like staggering down this path of not having wanted to talk about it, and we've now got you to talk about it for nearly 15, 20 minutes. I'm quite happy with that. Is that enough of Jim's misery for you as well, Al?
Yeah, I don't think he
needs the Raiders next week, so there's an opportunity to try and right a little bit of this wrong. I have no faith in our ability to do that. Having said that, the Raiders have just lost to the Panthers, which I think we can probably come on to next as the next point, to be fair.
I mean, we can. I was going to say, let's get some overwhelming positivity into it and talk about the Vikings for a bit, but Liam will kill me if we just spent all of our time now talking about the Vikings. So after last week, he did give us that. He did let us eat. So let's have a little chat about the Panthers. And I mean, Adam Thielen hurting yourself, getting a touchdown to put the game out of reach. Love you, brother. It's always Vikings. Over to you all.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know we've got an avid Panthers fan who watches all the videos, so he'll be happy because it's been a really painful time for them. It's pretty much since they traded Christian McCaffrey onwards, it's just been pain and pain and pain. I mean, probably, the thing is, Dave Canales took a brave decision benching Bryce Young. I mean, he was clearly a problem, but at the same time, he was the number 1 draft pick last year. But I think he had to take that action to save his own job, even though it was 2 games into the season. If he pursued it with Bryce and kept losing, we know what David Tepper's like. He would have just ended up firing Canales. And I think he's a good coach, actually. I don't know how... it's tough to see at the Panthers how good he can be. They're probably not going to get many wins, but the fact that they got a win against a team who beat Baltimore last week, bringing in a new quarterback, a veteran in Andy Dalton, who then was the only quarterback this season to pass for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns, is really impressive. Away at Las Vegas as well, not even a home game. I think Canales, he worked with Baker. If you give him a solid quarterback, he can create a dangerous offense. Obviously, they gave up some more points towards the end, but it was kind of garbage time points, a bit like what Jim was saying earlier with Deshaun Watson and Houston, just getting up the points when you don't need it. I think it was impressive, but I wasn't surprised, actually. I thought having that positivity of a new quarterback coming in who is competent was, a big deal for the Panthers, and now it's kind of solidified Bryce as probably not getting back in as the starter again. Not at the Panthers, anyway. I did hear rumours earlier this week that some other teams were interested in trading for him. I think the Seahawks was one of them. There was 3 others. I forgot which teams there were, but it's tough to see him as a starting NFL quarterback unless the team is in desperate trouble with injuries. And like Jim alluded to earlier, possibly the Browns could be a landing point for him. But I don't know, I just don't see it because he hasn't got the physicality on his side either. you've got other quarterbacks who are performing very poorly. I'm sure we'll get onto later, like Anthony Richardson, who at least have those physical capabilities that could potentially be developed. But that game against the Raiders may have just shown that actually it was Bryce Young's fault. But we've seen resurgence of quarterbacks before. Sam Darnold, Baker Mayfield, a few of these, Geno Smith, a few of these quarterbacks. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe 5 years down the line he'll end up finding himself a home. But for now, it seems like he's going to struggle to get back into his starting lineup.
I have a lot of sympathy for Bryce Young, to be honest. I think he was put out there unprepared with an offensive line that's effectively a sieve. No talent on offense. Adam Thielen, I appreciate the love for that from the Vikings fan, but he's a 32-year-old number one wide receiver who'd been in decline from the Vikings, hence he got cut. So in terms of Bryce Young has had his confidence destroyed. He's probably been physically destroyed with that offensive line. When you're 5'10", it's probably, now they've bought in some offensive line pieces. Baker struggled with seeing over the line at points. But obviously Canales fixed a lot of that with Baker last year in Tampa. I think it speaks. I personally don't think this was a coaching decision. When you look at it, Canales came out before the season to say that Bryce Young is our quarterback and will be our quarterback. And you don't make that, subsequently then make that decision after 2 games. I think it was probably the right one. I think it's possibly the best thing that could happen to Bryce Young because it means he'll get out of Carolina. Because David Tepper is what can only be described as a loose cannon idiot who doesn't have
Allegedly.
a clue how to run. Allegedly a loose cannon idiot who doesn't really know how to run an NFL franchise, and he's effectively just a billionaire trying to play with his toys. So I don't think, I think it's probably, if he goes to a more stable organisation, someone like the Seahawks, and sits behind Geno for a year. I'm not saying Geno's ideal to learn from, but you've got to rebuild that kid's confidence. He looked good for Alabama. By all accounts, he's an intelligent quarterback and an intelligent guy. Yeah, he hasn't got the biggest arm, and I know he can't make the 50-yard plus throws and things like that. But ultimately, we've seen in this league that you can win with quarterbacks that don't do that. And if they're effectively a game manager, Tua hasn't got the biggest arm either, to be honest. When you don't have the weapons, you don't have the line. We talked about it with Watson. Watson's got the weapons, but he hasn't got the protection, and he hasn't got the ability. Bryce Young's ability is definitely in question, I think it's fair to say. But even now, the offensive line, $160 million that they spent on 2 guards in the summer has done very little until they've got a veteran quarterback under centre in Andy Dalton, who is obviously far better at directing the offense with a lot more confidence because he's been doing it for 15 years. I'm not a big Andy Dalton fan due to his Bengals connections. But at the same time, I can appreciate that the guy is accurate. He's got a good arm. He's fairly calm and composed under pressure. Bryce Young must have been feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders probably from week 1 of last season. So he's 19 games in now, also, and I think the Panthers have seen enough. I think he'll probably be shipped out before the trade deadline. And I think the Panthers will probably be picking still in the top 3 to 5 in the draft next year, and be on the lookout for their next franchise quarterback, which 2 years after trading what they traded for Young it's not good. It's not how bad teams get better, by giving away first round picks to pick inferior players. And then the Texans with CJ Stroud and obviously everything he's done up until yesterday, which I think you guys are going to dive into in some detail in very short order. So, yeah, I think we've talked enough about Andy Dalton, Bryce Young and all that stuff. The Raiders, Pierce was calling out their defence today to say that they were just ringing it in. You're on mute, Dave.
I think in terms of the Raiders, Antonio Pierce, there were rumours that Devontae Adams might be traded after that game. There were some comments he made about particular players not wanting to be there and not trying their particular best. I didn't watch the Raiders game, so I can't say for certain how they played. But they lost to the Panthers, and even with Andy Dalton, that's still poor, especially after you've
They were
beaten
getting
Baltimore.
spanked by the Panthers as well. That was the thing. They were getting absolutely spanked, and they
At
put
home.
a couple of touchdowns in the fourth quarter to make it look closer. Very reminiscent of the Dallas Browns game, first game of the season, where it should have been 40 points to Dallas and wasn't. So, and that was very reminiscent of it. The Raiders didn't rally late. They picked up a couple of garbage time touchdowns. So,
Yeah, Aidan O'Connell came in actually, didn't he, towards the end of the game?
I did watch most of it, and I can tell you that the big difference what I saw, this is no disrespect to Bryce Young, I would never have gambled the number 1 overall pick on him, same as I wouldn't have Caleb Vischer. But with all due respect to Bryce Young, he doesn't know how to shift the protection, because the big difference was Dalton moving his protection around. And it's basic preparation. It's criminal. He's been allowed to start in the league for a year without knowing how to move his protection. And that is the coaching for me. And if it's something that he just can't grasp, then the right thing to do is to sit him behind a professional who can teach him how. And if I was them, I probably wouldn't let him go at this point. Because they've invested so much draft capital in him, I'd be tempted to keep him around for a year and just see if him having a very, very solid pro there, teaching him how to prepare, teaching him what he's looking for, teaching him how to move the O-line in a way where it's going to give him time to throw. I think there's some value in that for him. But if Bryce Young's available, people should trade for him, but sit him and teach him.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think for me, the biggest thing that the Panthers could have done to help Bryce Young would have been to move the protection call into the centre. A lot of teams use their centre to call the correct protections and to move the protections around. The Browns are one because Deshaun Watson can't cope with that either. But there's plenty of NFL teams who's like Jason Kelsey always called the protections for the Eagles. So there's no harm in doing it. The Panthers have invested a hell of a lot of money on that interior offensive line. I think they've got 2 first-round picks now at tackle. So all in all, that offensive line should be better than it is. But yeah, if you're putting protection, someone who's never called protections, is not good at calling protections, and has consistently been under siege called protections, you need to learn from your mistakes at some point instead of just doing what the last head coach did. And that's where Canales has fallen down a little bit on this one. I still don't, like I say, I don't think it was all his decision. I think that was, I think that's come from Tepper personally. I don't think it would have come from the GM either. But yeah, it's one of those. Young's, I think he's salvageable. But how salvageable? If you could get him to Kyler Murray level, then would you be happy with that? I probably would be. Personally, I'm quite happy watching Kyler Murray run around in circles on a Sunday. I find it very entertaining. If Bryce Young could do that and command the offense with the offensive line helping him out with actually knowing the protections and shifting them themselves, that would be helpful. He hasn't got a lot of receivers on the outside, but Andy Dalton's just put up 300 plus yards with them against the Raiders, so that's not really an excuse. So I think, look, Bryce Young's not blameless. He's not as blameworthy as he's being made out to be, I don't think. And I think he is salvageable. Like I said, if he whether it's with the Panthers, which I hope it isn't for his sake, I hope he gets traded to someone like the Seahawks or someone who's got a stable franchise, maybe a starting quarterback coming towards the end of their career, and Bryce Young can sit for a year, learn this protections piece, not be under siege when he comes in, and generally just, show what he can do. That might be not a lot, let's be honest. We don't know. That guy's had the least time to throw in the league for, I think, 17 of his 19 starting games. So it's not all on Bryce Young. Just ask Justin Fields. Justin Fields was absolutely under siege with the Bears last year, and that's why they've moved on to Caleb Williams. And now Caleb Williams is under siege, and it's being blamed. And the offensive line's being blamed again. So you can have all the the weapons in the world, like we've said. Deshaun's got Amari Cooper, Jerry Jeudy, Elijah Moore. But if you've got no time to throw, and you're constantly running for your life, then it's not going to go very well for any quarterback. With the exception of Lamar Jackson, to be honest, that he's about the only quarterback who runs for his life on probably 60% of offensive snaps, who actually can turn it around, and that's a credit to him. Everyone else, no.
The injury will happen for him, simply because just watching him, he's having to take some chances. He's lost a little bit of muscle. I know he did that to get quicker. We'll see with him.
Here at Utter Punts, we love watching the NFL with friends, and in our opinion, there's no better place to grab a bite to eat and watch the NFL than Beer Keller in Manchester. Whether you're grabbing a bratwurst or smashing through some wings, there's loads of HD screens and a superb choice of drinks behind the bar too. Most importantly for us though, the people are brilliant, like-minded NFL fans who want to enjoy the game and have a laugh. It's definitely one of the best venues to watch your favourite team in.
Go on.
I was just going to say, I think that shows how important this whole Bryce Young situation. Obviously, his first rookie year was under Frank Reich, who was fired shortly after. It really shows how important the coaching aspect is, because we've seen, particularly yesterday as well, quarterbacks who have been under siege and have been dropped and benched who were highly rated before. And I'm not just alluding to Sam Darnold and the Vikings, although that is a big talking point. You look at how effective coaching can be in terms of Jim previously, and a change of scenery as well. Jim previously mentioned Justin Fields. He's now at the Steelers, and he's really starting to establish himself there. Obviously under Mike Tomlin, who is a legendary coach. They've gone 3-0. I know they've been boring games on the whole, but it shows how solid their defense is and what good coaching can bring you. You know, they've never had a losing season under him, even if most of those were 9-8. Matt, as much as I don't like the guy, Matt LaFleur and Malik Willis. It may have been against the Titans, but you still got to do it at the end of the day. And he's coached Malik Willis to 2 wins for the Green Bay Packers while Jordan Love has been out. Andy Dalton coming in, doing a job. Again, Dave Canales, we know he can be good with quarterbacks, as he did with Baker last year. Sam Darnold, obviously, as I previously mentioned, with Kevin O'Connell. So there's and Bo Nix as well with Sean Payton, who, as much as I don't like the guy, is a Super Bowl winning head coach. He may not have thrown a passing touchdown, but he came against a very good Buccaneers team and beat them, got rushing touchdown, managed the game effectively. And the Broncos got a surprise win there. And obviously from previous tenures, Geno Smith, under Pete Carroll at the Seattle Seahawks, earned himself a brand new contract. So it does show how a change of scenery alongside good quality coaching, understanding and taking the time to make sure that the quarterback understands the system, they understand how the protection works, and they're more established in the league. It really is important, and I agree, Bryce Young may be salvageable, he may be not. We have had busts in the past who just aren't, simply. But, I think he deserves a chance when you're a number 1 pick. Arguably shouldn't have been, but still was at the end of the day to salvage your career. But I personally don't see that happening at the Panthers because of the atmosphere of the franchise with Tepper's ownership and what he's already experienced there. I think he needs not a rookie head coach, which is what Dave Canales is. He needs someone more established who's done it before to help him out.
I was going to say, an inexperienced quarterback needs to be put into an environment where they can succeed. We saw it with CJ Stroud coming into the Texans last year. Played well, offensive line was good, weapons were good, all good, no issues. Sam Darnold has come into a situation with the Vikings where the offensive line is good. He's got the best receiver in the league in Justin Jefferson. He's got Addison, which he hasn't had yesterday. He's also got Hawkinson to come back as well. I want to talk about the Hawkinson piece coming for Sam Darnold and how I think that's actually going to be a negative for you guys, but we'll get onto that in a little bit. But ultimately, it's putting quarterbacks who have maybe low on confidence or haven't worked out or are fresh out of the draft in a position to succeed with an offensive line that can block and receivers that can catch. If you've got a running back that can get you 4.5 yards a carry, again, like the Vikings have got with Aaron Jones, then, you know, you're in a much better position. You take a lot of pressure off that quarterback, whereas, you know, Bryce Young's situation is the blueprint for failure in terms of putting a rookie quarterback in last year, and that's bled over into this year. In terms of the others, you know, there's an argument for people being, you know, you'd say the Browns situation was a good situation, not season to date. But there's there's plenty of other examples. The Green Bay offensive line is pretty good. The Steelers offensive line is pretty good. So, you know, a lot of this comes down to your work in the trenches, and if your offensive line isn't blocking properly or isn't shifting protections and isn't able to gel with the quarterback and the running back and provide the running lanes and give time for routes to develop and things like that, you're on a hiding to nothing. Andy Dalton has given them some good feels in this game. I'm not sure who they're playing next week. But I don't think the Dalton goodwill tour is going to last too long. But it's a definitive, an improvement on what they'd seen previously.
The Panthers have the Bengals next week.
Yeah, and that's depending on the results of tonight's game with the Bengals, they could be 0-3, and that would be considered a must-win game. Or they could be 1-2 and still considered a must-win game for them, to be honest. So it'll be interesting to see. The Bengals' defense isn't what it was last year, but let's just keep an eye on it. We'll keep talking about it. Andy Dalton, the Renaissance, we shall see.
So, yeah, I mean, while you were both talking, a couple of things that popped into my head. Like, the big pattern for me in terms of QBs actually being successful is when they've been picked by the head coach who has to coach them. If you think about it, Bryce Young wasn't the choice of Frank Reich. Things haven't gone well. Sam Darnold was the choice of Brian Gase, but I think he left pretty soon afterwards due to the atrocious job he was doing. Robert Saleh, I think it was, came in and Darnold wasn't his guy. You've had turnover pretty much everywhere where the QB's been brought in but not been the actual choice of the coach. And I think you can see how it works when people go off to new, like pastures new, and they do feel wanted. So Malik Willis, case in point, brought in by Matt LaFleur, handpicked. They actually even went and traded for him. And then yesterday, lads, Malik Willis got the opportunity to play against his replacement, Will Levis, as the Packers played the Titans. Now, did you see how that panned out? Much as I hate the Packers. Hats off, Malik Willis.
I was very amused by it because I saw a tweet that was, if only the Titans had a quarterback like Malik Willis, and I'm not. Yeah, if only. So that made me smile, to be honest. Will Levis, sunk cost, gone. He's finished at the end of the season. Will probably struggle for a backup job in the league, I would expect.
The pick from Jair Alexander, it was a pick six, but it's the easiest pick six I've ever seen. I've never seen a quarterback look at a QB and throw it.
It's the one he did last week where he tried to rugby pass it out into to try and get it out of bounds, and it was just a fumble and it got returned for a touchdown. Just the decision making's been embarrassing for him. A well-run franchise like the Packers made the Titans made them look schoolboy. I fully expect the Titans to be picking in the top 5 this season and selecting a new quarterback come the draft.
I think Brian Callahan wants to kill Will Levis looking at his facial expressions on the sideline.
I know, man.
Yeah, I mean, he came out after the second game. He's like basically said he's a grown ass man. He knows what he's doing, and we worked on this after he did these stupid turnovers in the first game, and he still hasn't fixed it. And then he's gone on in the third game against. Listen, the Packers are a good, well-run franchise, like Jim said, but a weakened Packers arguably, and they looked awful, and Levis looked awful. I don't think the Titans' schedule has been particularly that difficult either in the first 3 weeks, and he's just looked terrible. It makes it. Dad brought this up actually to me the other day. I'm glad Kevin O'Connell nipped that in the bud, because apparently there was interest before the draft of the Vikings in Will Levis, and Kevin O'Connell did not like him at all. So I'm glad we didn't end up with it.
Because Kevin O'Connell was one of his coaches in college or high school. I remember that being the reason he was so heavily linked to us by the draft Twitter eye.
But yeah, listen, the Packers, to be fair to you'll know Dave and I's feelings on them, but coming out of this after this injury 2-1, it is pretty good for them.
It's brilliant. Fair play to them. Like Matt LaFleur doing a very good job. Makes you wonder why they're playing Jordan Love all that money, doesn't it?
And yeah, I mean, it brings an argument. Some people saying, do the Packers just need a system quarterback? Like people think Brock Purdy is at the 49ers, which I think is something we should get onto that game as well.
LaFleur was Shanahan's offensive coordinator before he went to Green Bay. So their systems are going to be very, very similar. And obviously, we might as well move on to it now with Purdy and how he's performing. But it's a different quarterback to what we saw last year. Completely different quarterback. I think, again, it's going down to his protection and not having Christian McCaffrey there, taking all the heat off him. His left tackle didn't practice for the whole of the summer and came in, signed a contract the day before the season started and started the next game.
Went off with leg cramps in the first half yesterday, and forced me to place a bet that paid off, but that's beside the point. Like, as soon as I saw, he's that important to Trent Williams. As soon as I saw him getting carried off, even though they were actually 14-7 up at the time, I immediately backed heavily on the Rams.
Most of the first downs against the Vikings last week for the 49ers were check downs to George Kittle, who was their most effective offensive player by a mile, and he was out as well yesterday. So you're missing George Kittle, you're missing Christian McCaffrey. Trent Williams clearly isn't up to fitness.
We can't fail to mention one player from this game, though, because he put in the best performance from a wide receiver this season. Juwan Jennings. Oh my God, sir, you did not deserve to finish on the losing side. Was it 3 or 4 touchdowns, 200 yards receiving? Like, what a player. And yeah, it'll probably be available in an awful lot of fantasy leagues as well, unless it's been picked up as a handcuff.
Well, yeah, that's with Ayuk and everyone else playing in that respect. So there's no, you can't quantify it. It happens from time to time. Purdy, system quarterback. Malik Willis, a system quarterback. You can argue Sam Darnold's a system quarterback who's been rehabilitated in the Shanahan system. And now come to O'Connell, who's worked with Shanahan in the past as well.
100%. Darnold will be great for us, but he has a ceiling. That's why when we replace him with one of the top 2 quarterbacks in the league next year, it's going to be great.
Wow, there's talk that you're going to be talking extension with him in the not too distant future before his price goes too high.
I'd extend him. Let JJ McCarthy and Sam Darnold battle it out in camp next year, and then Sam Darnold can be traded for some handsome draft picks to a team that wants him, who are capable of supporting him, and go on to have a great career. And I will salute you, sir. You gave us our first Super Bowl. But I still want JJ McCarthy.
Like, if he doesn't Nick Foles, he can have a lifetime extension for all I care, to be honest. We're still very early into the season, so that's not, something at the moment.
If you're still, at the end of the day, the offense is humming. Defense, we spoke about briefly at the start, best in the league. That's not too far-fetched through 3 games. That's not far-fetched through 3 games, I should say, not 2. It is not far-fetched. You watch the Vikings front 7, it is ferocious. And that's probably the only word you can use to describe it. And it's taking all of the heat off the backfield, which is absolutely key for the Vikings, because they've got some young players and some older players like Harrison Smith in there, and being able to take that heat off that off that back four, and having the the stunts, the twists, everything, the ball rush from that front seven. It's absolutely flustering and bamboozling quarterbacks. And CJ Stroud looked like a first-round rookie playing his first game yesterday, and he hasn't looked like that since he was a first. He hasn't looked like that, regardless of the fact he was a rookie last year.
Maybe his very first game, I think he struggled a little bit and then found his groove. But he said that last year he didn't know what he was looking at. This year he knows what he's looking at, and he said that this is before the game against the Vikings. He said that he felt that he was a better quarterback this year than he had been last year, and he understood what he was looking at. And I think he then ran into a defence that just showed him something he hadn't seen before. But he'll be great because he's CJ Stroud and he's bloody awesome. So he will
That's
be fine.
that's the first defense in the NFL since the 2001 Saints to get 5+ sacks in each of the first three games of the season.
I did not know
And I'd
that.
argue that while you've got depth at defensive end, you haven't got an elite playmaker. Like you've got the Browns with Garrett, you've got Crosby at the Raiders, you've got TJ Watt at the Steelers. You haven't got a player of that level yet. You've got it's a combined effort to get to with a single purpose, and that is get to the quarterback. Brian Flores, he hates quarterbacks. Asked Tua. So when he was in Miami. So
Tua, calmer, mate. You should get your mouth shut. Sorry.
Yeah.
But the point you're making is a good one. You've got Garrett out there, your Nick Bosa's, your Max Crosby's, you're truly elite. Oh my God, we have to change everything to deal with these guys' players. And a defence gets set up based on the fact that people are going to have to give everything to go and deal with that one player. The Vikings, are unthreatening. And what I mean by that is, Grenard was playing against his former team. Do you know what they did? They left him in one-on-ones against rookie tight ends. So what did he do? 7 pressures, 3 sacks. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it was a destruction. That was an absolute destruction of that yesterday.
And that's the thing. I don't think we've got no 99 players, no 99 rated Madden players, but we've got 7 players who are all rating between 83 and 90, and that's pretty damn hard to deal with. I'd trade them all away to get better players in the next draft on Madden, but
that's just how you roll. And let's not forget, you didn't even have your first round rookie pass rusher on the field yesterday. I can't remember his name.
Dallas Turner, Ivan Pace Jr. were both out, as well as on the offensive side, TJ Atkinson and Jordan Addison. And it genuinely should have been a shutout as well. I mean, it was a individual mistake from Byron Murphy Jr. that led to their touchdown. It realistically could have been a shutout. Cam Akers, the former Viking. So there were so many ex-players on both sides. It was
9. I think it was 9 or 10. Yeah. Depending on if Irv Smith Jr. is with them or not, I'm not entirely sure.
But to be fair to Stefon Diggs as well, he was going round to all the Vikings fans signing stuff and being sound, to be fair. So he may be seen as a diva in the locker room, but he seems like a decent bloke overall.
100%. The jersey swap with Jefferson. I'll let you carry on. Just one thing I wanted to just make sure we don't leave out. Danielle Hunter didn't deliberately hit Sam Darnold low. He got blocked into him and was as surprised as anybody else when he ended up with his head between his lower legs. And he looked confused, and explained that to Brian O'Neill as well. And after the game, Danielle Hunter was going around the home fans signing autographs. So it's not as though, because some people seem to have decided that he deliberately tried to harm the Vikings. You idiots, quite frankly. Things happen in life. Danielle Hunter is a quality human being.
Although what I will say is that moment I thought, that was the first moment this season where I thought season's over, when Sam Darnold went in and Nick Mullins came out.
Breaking news, the Vikings have got the MRI results on Sam Darnold. I'm not lying at all. The Vikings aren't allowed nice things, lads.
What?
But it's okay, he's only bruised his knee. Ollie shit himself.
You're a dick.
It was a full-on moment of flatulence on the younger Keane part, that most definitely.
Just as I'm talking about Sam Darnold, like Kevin O'Connell may be a quarterback whisperer, but we ain't got a chance of winning anything with Nick Mullins as our quarterback. So
no, you haven't.
So
go on, Ollie. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, like, it was the first time in my life as a Vikings fan where we've looked fully comfortable in a win where we fully deserved it. The thing is, in 2022, when we started the season 8-1, I think. But apart from the first game against the Packers, they were all one-score games decided in the fourth quarter. This time we could have shut out the Giants and the Texans.
Definitely.
Neither of them got to double digits against us. The 49ers, frankly, that should have been a bigger scoreline if you watch that game fully. The Vikings had some missed opportunities. Aaron Jones scored on the 1 yard line. It's a much different scenario, even though it's the same 3-0 start. It's a much different 3-0, and I hope it lasts. The defense and the offense and special teams are all looking equally great at the minute, so we'll have to see. I mean, we've talked a lot about the Vikings, but yeah.
I mean, I want to just talk about one other thing, and I alluded to it earlier when we were talking, and that was the impending return of TJ Hawkinson at your tight end. And I think as Vikings fans, you're rightfully excited to get all of your offensive toys on the field at the same time. When I said I think it may actually be a detriment to the Vikings, I think that's because O'Connell at the moment is calling a game that is centred around your wide receiver talent and long balls or short balls. Where Sam Darnold really struggles is over the middle of the field and in mid-range passing, so in the 10 to 20 yard range. If he's got a hell of an arm on him, can throw it 60 yards, no issues. He's got decent placement in short throws. Hawkinson's bread and butter is the middle of the field, 15 yard down the field. When Hawkinson comes back, is that going to complicate the offense and complicate Darnold's decision making? I have to put plays in there for him to show he's worth 15 million a year or whatever. So that's a question I've got for you two guys.
So I think that's an interesting point, and a lot will depend on Sam Darnold's decision making, because the beauty of this offense, from what I see, is the fact that there's always multiple options available to the quarterback, and he chooses what he wants to hit. A case in point being the 57-yard air ball to Justin Jefferson against the San Francisco 49ers, where it went for the 97-yard touchdown. If you look at that play, he actually had two options open underneath. And they invented that play before the 2022 season, I think. Kevin O'Connell was talking about it. And we've actually run it on several occasions. And we've never actually gone for the ball over the top before, because our previous quarterback used to always go for the underneath option. And for O'Connell, it was like, here's my offense, right? And he's not criticising Kirk. He loves Kirk. We all know that. He would have kept him. Like, no doubt about it, he would have kept him. But the whole point of having a GM is to take the emotion out of the situation and make sure that you are getting the best possible return on your resources. Kwesi Adofo-Mensah has been doing that for us, I think, for the last 2 years. I don't think he did it in the first year, but he was learning. And as a result, I feel more than happy with the fact that so long as Darnold plays to his instincts, and he's always been a bit of a gunslinger, you might not see Hawkinson picking up as many targets across the middle of the field as we're approaching the red zone. But another thing that O'Connell said was that Jalen Naylor was running the routes that would have been Hawkinson's routes rather than the routes which would have been Addison's, and which is interesting, I think. And basically, he's picked up a couple of touchdowns. So what you might see is
3 touchdowns in 3 games.
Yeah, you might see Hawkinson be a bit more of a red zone threat, and because we're much more committed to the running game, and I feel that our habit of hitting the tight end over the middle was almost our replacement for the short game. That's what I'm hoping, but it's a valid concern, Jim, and a good one.
I think what'll be it's going to go one of two ways, because Hawkinson will act as a good decoy. Like you said, you've got a good running game, so the safeties have to come up a little bit so they're not breaking off huge runs. Then you're going to add Hawkinson into the mix, who's going to take a coverage guy out of the way. So then you could be creating, Addison Did he only play in the first game? Was it, or did he go off halfway through San Francisco or something? I'm not sure.
It was the first game. He was out.
Addison, scored 9 touchdowns last season or 10. Whatever it was, 10, and they were all in one-on-one situations. What you're not seeing at the moment is these one-on-ones because Hawkinson's not there. You're seeing a little bit of it because the safeties are sitting higher. But when Hawkinson comes in, a safety's going to have to take Hawkinson. So all of a sudden, you're down to one safety and one corner on either on Jefferson and Addison running the perimeters. So it could massively open it up. And as long as Darnold stays accurate, like he has been through the first 3 games, keeps that mentality, which is the anti-Kirk, which again, that's what you appreciate. And ultimately, Kevin O'Connell is calling amazing games at the moment from an offensive perspective. He's massively backed up by that Brian Flores defense, which is very, very helpful. But at the same time, to take Sam Darnold, who failed at the Jets, where else? He's been to the Panthers, I think. Then he's been to the 49ers as their 3rd string quarterback. He's now come in to start for the Vikings, and he's scored the most touchdowns in the league. That's no mean feat, and it almost looks like, I've said it to Dave on a number of occasions, it looks like that offense is pretty much scripted for the whole game, and nothing's gone wrong. And it's really interesting, and I think it's making Sam Darnold overperform. Having said that, he's now performing in line with where people expected him to be when he was drafted at number 2 in the draft. So the ability's always been there. It's hitting on, like Ollie said earlier. It's finding that right place, right time, right coach that believes in you. The Vikes, we've said, great offensive line, running game. Best wide receiver room in the league. One of the top 5 tight ends in the league when he's back. Quarterbacks are set up for success at the Vikings. And then you've got the Flores defense, which is number 1 in the league and unstoppable at the moment. So, that's the situation. You put Bryce Young into that, and you might have won 1 game out of the 3. But it's still better than what he's managed at the Panthers over the last year and a bit. So, it's an interesting one, and definitely one to keep an eye on. I'm a bit worried. I'm not worried. What I would say is, when Darnold goes wrong, he goes very, very wrong. And it's not all going to be plain sailing. But from what we've seen for these 3 weeks, he looks like probably a top 5 quarterback in the NFL through these first 3 weeks as a bare minimum, if not the best from an pure execution perspective.
I'd ask you this, Ollie. I'm going to throw it out there. You're biased, but I think there's an opportunity for you to give this answer and not really be being biased. Which team is playing the best in the NFL right now?
The Vikings.
Jim? I never thought I'd say it this year. I never thought I'd say it, but we are playing better than anybody else.
Because you look at the other teams that are 3-0, right?
Ollie, I am going to stop you there because we're about to move on to a game, including those other teams who are 3-0. So, bear with me. What's your final thoughts on the Vikings?
I think at the minute, like Jim just said, nothing's gone wrong, which is not the Vikings way. It seems to have all been scripted to perfection on offense, defense. I hope it lasts. We've now obviously week 1 against the Giants. Everyone was ecstatic because we hadn't had a dominant win over anyone in years. Didn't matter if they were good or bad. But now you've come up against back-to-back teams who were in the playoffs last year, in the Texans and Niners. The Niners obviously in the Super Bowl, and you've won them in dominant fashion. So we'll have to see how it goes. Obviously, I want them to get to the Super Bowl, but we'll see from here. But this was one of the tougher parts of our schedule, and we've come out of it 3-0. So we'll see.
I think our hardest game this season will be away in the Packers at the weekend, regardless of who plays quarterback. If we can win that, then I will start believing we're really the real deal. Right now, I'm not expecting us to win that game, but I'll be happy to be pleasantly surprised.
Brian Flores' defense against Malik Willis is a complete different kettle of fish, though, because and not in a good way for Malik Willis, to be honest with you. Let's be honest, that kid started 5 games, so defensive coordinators don't have tape on him. They don't have a lot to go on his tendencies, other than the fact that he's good at running the ball. They've got college tape on him. That's about it. If Flores puts him under absolute siege, like we saw at the weekend and like we've seen over the first 3 weeks, Malik Willis, could well crumble. I wouldn't be surprised to see it. I think the Green Bay offensive line's better than anything you faced this year, to be perfectly honest. So I'm not expecting a sack palooza like you had at the weekend. But if with the talent that you've got, if you can, just cause him to pause for a minute, and this is where your secondary might come in. If your secondary can step up, and it's not all going to be on the front seven, like it's going to have to be in a few games at least this season. This is probably the first one. And your linebackers are going to have to be spying Willis for the run constantly. Then, I think you've got the recipe for success against them. But there are a number of factors that we need to consider on that.
Cool. I just love a good Viking loving, but we are going to move on. We're going to finish off today with a little game, which just lets us briefly cover all of the 3-0 teams. What I'm going to do is I'm going to name the team, and then instantly, as soon as I name it, I want you boys to take it in turns. So, for example, if we were to do the Bills, but we're only 2-0, not 3-0 yet. But if we were to do the Bills, and I said the Bills, I'd want you to say whether or not we're a contender, they're a fraud, or they are a no-hoper. Right? Just instant reaction for all 3 teams. So I'll ask the first one. We'll start with Ollie. You give your instant reaction about team, and Jimmy, you give yours, and then we'll go through the other teams. Okay? So let's start with, why not, the Seattle Seahawks. Ollie. Too slow. Jim, yours.
Fraud.
Ollie.
Fraud.
Okay, so you don't think they're going to be there at the end of the season? Interesting. Okay, next one. Let's do the Chiefs.
Fraud.
Contender.
Interesting. Okay. That's putting
It's
your neck
Patrick
out on the line,
Mahomes,
man.
man. It's Patrick
I agree.
Mahomes. Plus, it's 11 men on offense, plus 5 referees that you're playing against. Let's be honest.
That's some disgusting
interference
decisions.
When I say fraud,
Absolutely disgraceful.
when I say fraud, I'm comparing it to their previous standards.
Interesting, because last year they weren't very good and still won the Super Bowl. But that's all good. Next one. You'll like this. Pittsburgh Steelers. Jim.
Fraud.
Contender.
Oh, a little bit of a difference of opinion there. And we'll finish with the team that we've spent a lot of this pod talking about, even though I promised we wouldn't. What the hell, I love them anyway. Minnesota Fighting Vikings. Ollie, Jim?
No hopers.
Hey, we're going to leave it there. Thanks so much, boys. It's been a lot of fun. And see you later, Ollie.
See you later, mate.
See you later, Jim.
Peace out.
Liam, do us a good job on the editing. God knows we need it. Thank you so much for being with us this week. Like and subscribe. We'll be on Punts. Bye bye.